This is really high ranked and competitive. Achilles struggles against some of the current top tiers, but he's still like fine into them. He's just not as dominant as he could be in like other metas. Agni is one of the best mages in the game. Very high pick ban. You should know how to play him. This is the entire game, whatever role they're best in. You should know how to play Agni right now. You should know how to build Agni. You should know how to lane with Agni. Agni should be 100% in your wheelhouse. Amuzin Cobb, I think he's pretty average. He has some good counter matchups, some good matchups. He lanes pretty well. His build right now is fine. It's not great. His kit right now is fine, not great. I do think he's more of a mid laner than an ADC though. Opwash is actually in a good spot right now. I think this is probably the best spot Opwash has been in a while. Because of how good the healers are right now, I think it makes Opwash something you should know how to play, because if the enemy team goes something like Guan, Hell, Terra, Opwash is an insta-lock, and he'll run that game. Alma, another good character. I think she's kind of like Achilles, where she's not as dominant as she could be in other metas. She doesn't match up too well against the top solo laners, but she's fine. If a lot of the top solo laners are banned, she's good. And if she gets to late game, she's a character that you just walk to objectives and you just one-shot them. On her, I think on her's pretty average right now. Average to maybe even bad. On her loses matchups. What he should be strong with is winning lane, and right now he does not win lane. It's very hard for him to clear wave, and a lot of the good to great gods in ADC are gods that can clear wave. So on her, it doesn't do that well. He's not very good. Anubis. I actually think Anubis is pretty good right now. His build is very good. The change to his 1 to allow him to move, even if it's just barely, was just enough that he's a little more slippery, and he can actually just get away from you a bit easier. He can also wrap you, drop his 3, and then 1 towards you, and he's closed the gap a little bit instead of having to walk forward and then 1, and then he just loses a bunch of time where he's not hitting you. But yeah, Anubis is very, very strong right now. Or very, very good. Very good. Ao Kuang. I think Ao Kuang is pretty average. I think his build right now is not great. I think he struggles to execute a lot of gods right now because solo laners are really happy to go beads. His early game is not very good. He gets smoked by a lot of good junglers right now. The game does go late. He's going to be a strong character like always, but yeah, he's average. Aphrodite, maybe our first permaban god. Slightly more towards ranked. I think she's a permaban. She just makes it so one god on the enemy team is just impossible to deal with, whether it's Hebo or Vamana or the enemy hunter or any other jungler that's diving like Baka or any other mid laner that just is what, like Anubis or Zeus, where if you get on top of them, you need to be able to kill them, otherwise you just lose the fight. And then you can't shut her down. Her laning phase is really good. Her 2v2 is very good. Her 3v3 is very good. And then she scales well into the late game. Afro in a great spot. Apollo is probably one of the worst hunters in the game, IMO. His entire kit is very bad, other than his passive. He doesn't really do anything better than another ADC. If you want global, just go Chernobog. If you want an attack speed stim, you got Rama. You got like gods like Izza. Personally, I think Apollo is one of the worst hunters in the game. He's very easy to dive. His PL is not great. Overall, just not a great god. Arachne. We'll put Arachne in average. I think she's okay. If she gets ahead, she's very, very hard to deal with. If she's behind, she's very easy to deal with. And that 50-50 is kind of what you're skating on when you play Arachne. Everyone knows Arachne by now. If she's going to 1v1 you in the jungle and she's slightly far ahead, or she has beads and you're relying on one-shotting her, you're going to lose that 1v1. Everyone knows what Arachne does. Nothing's really changed. Arachne is where Arachne is. Ares. I think Ares is in a good spot. I think he's got good matchups into a lot of the top tiers, who you will see. So far, he's got a really good matchup into Agni. Not a great matchup into Afro. Actually, pretty bad. But that's kind of the spot that support is in right now, where some characters beat some characters lose to other characters, but all these characters are still in that top, like, high PV permaban area. Ares has got a really good 2v2. His 5 being his ult being a 90-second cooldown helps him a lot, and he's just got a lot of base damage. He's very, very tanky right now, and then when the game goes late, he's hoping that his team is in a spot where they can carry the game kind of for him. Artemis, another one of the worst hunters in the game, but I do think she's slightly better than Apollo. She has a good counter pick into some of the decent characters right now in ADC. I think she's just a little weak. Ever since they made Roots DR, Artemis has just felt a lot worse. When you could ult and then drop your 1 on top of that person and you can try to kill them, or you can kill them in that entire duration, it really, really messed her up that she can no longer do that. You ult and then you root underneath them, and the root is lasting only 40% of the time. Doesn't feel great. Makes her feel a lot worse. RDO, I think RDO's in a good spot. Even though they nerfed her, she still does what she does well. She has a good laning phase. She scales well into a good team fighter as a solo laner because she can dive by herself kind of and then kite back to her team. And then she's just very, very hard to deal with if she does get ahead. Healing, so it makes her so she can 2v2 early game. But she does fall off pretty hard. She's someone you can pick pretty easily. Still, she's a good character. Athena, I think Athena's in a good spot. Not great, not bad. She's giving you that global presence. Very good for ranked. Now putting points into your 2 reduces the cooldown on your 2, so your pick potential is slightly better. Very simple. You dash taunt. Sometimes you don't even need to dash taunt. You just taunt. But she's in a very good spot right now. Atlas. We'll put Atlas in good too. The strength of Atlas is being able to build him with a little bit of damage, and he's still safe enough to be able to be a tank. His ult with a lot of power, his 1-2-3 combo with a lot of power makes it so he's got a lot of kill potential. You have to deal with him in team fights. Otherwise, he will be able to carry that team fight. With Deso getting nerfed, it does hurt him a little bit, but I still think he's a very good Deso god. If you're playing ranked, you're playing support, Alice is a god that'll allow you to carry games. A Willix. I think a Willix is also in a good spot. I think she does what she does well. She plays for picks early. I think she actually scales well into a one-shot god with Erendite and just being able to blink or ult and then blink and then one shot. So I think it's pretty sick how Willix does stuff like that. A lot of gods that are good right now do have jumps, so she's a good counter into them. But if she falls behind, she's very easy to just run down and kill. Her self-safety is not that strong. Same thing as Arachne. If she gets ahead, she's very hard to deal with. If she's behind, she's pretty free kill. Baba. I think Baba in ranked is a high PB character because she is very, very hard to deal with. Early, mid, and late game. She gives a lot of damage. Weird CC that you're like the enemy team has to play around, but your team doesn't really have to worry about. So it's painful for the enemy team, but your team doesn't care. If you're getting dove, you have a lot of survivability, and she scales really well in the late game. Probably one of the best late game mages, period. Baba is sick. Bacchus. Another good god. He's fine. He 2v2s well. He's got good damage. He builds into full power, or he builds into power or full tank, both very well. His CC is very strong. Anti-heal built into his kit also makes him very strong. He's alright. Baka. Until Crit is completely dead, I think Baka is going to be a high PB character, just because of how hard he can carry games if he even gets like a tiny lead. Like, you compare him to a Willix, you compare him to Arachne, and if he falls behind, he can just go into ultra farm mode and just take over the entire map and just eat it all. So Baka, on the other hand, even if he is behind, he can still just power farm and get to a point where he's even again, and then 50-50 some fights, and the game is then back in his favor. Probably one of the best ranked junglers in the game. Baka, high PB. I think Baron as a support is a lot better than Baron as a mid, but either way, I think he's mostly just a counter pick god. Into supports or mids that don't have movement speed, Baron's actually very, very strong, or a movement ability. Baron is very, very strong. If they have movement abilities, Baron is just a god that really doesn't do too much. So it's just dependent on, does the enemy have somebody that I can abuse as my 3 and then just ult them in also. Bastet, bad. Really bad. If you want to know why Bastet is so bad, go into Scream's stream and just ask him about Bastet, and he'll just go on a big spiel about why she's so bad and why they should revert her. Bastet, not very good. Bellona, another average character. She wins lane. She doesn't scale that well, but she does win lane, and that's what her entire job kind of is. In the mid game, she can kind of dominate fights because she just has so many built-in protections and movement speed, so she kind of just runs you down. But the game is going late a lot right now, so she doesn't really get to that point where she can just carry the games, or it gets past the point where she can carry the games and to the point where she becomes useless. Kabrakan. I think Kabrakan is one of the better supports, but I wouldn't put him in high PB. I don't think he's like that top tier supports, mostly just like the next tier. He's very tanky. He does a lot of damage. He's got really good setup, and he's very good with all the current relics. Sunder, he can just one-shot who's ever in front of him. Horrific, he can horrific somebody to pull relic and then kill them right after, or horrific the jungler to give him a peel option. And then Bracer allows him to just kind of one all around the map and just sprint all over the place. Kabrakan in a fine spot. Kabrakan. Kamazoth. I don't think Kama's very good. I'm going to put him in the average tier. The meta doesn't really allow for Kama to do what Kama wants to do. I think he's better in jungle right now than solo. He's got some 1v1s that he wins really hard, which makes it really nice if you're playing him. But then he's also got some matchups where he could be rather useless. If he falls behind, he has no CC. He's only just damage. So unlike a Willix and Arachne and Baka, if he's behind, he genuinely has no CC. So it's basically him blinking and just trying to get a kill, hoping he gets a kill. And if he doesn't, then he's just useless. Serb, I think Serb is really bad. He has gotten so many buffs and he still doesn't feel any better. I'm probably pretty biased because I only play him in support, but I'm going to say he's really bad. Maybe in solo lane he's average, but I cannot stand the character because of just how bad he is in support. Cern, permaban, probably one of the best hunters in the game, if not the best hunter in the game. Even after the, I think it's like 2 or 3 nerfs in a row that he's gotten to his 1, his 2, he is still very, very strong. And his passive, he is still very, very strong. The melee range allows him to kill any objective, anyone in front of him. He doesn't have a ton of self-peel right now, but a lot of the supports that are picked are self-peel support or peel supports, so it gives him survivability even when he has very little. Very, very good right now. Chalk. I'm going to put him in average. I think Chalk is in probably the best spot Chalk has ever been in. Currently, his rain reduces power, it reduces attack speed, and he does good poke damage, good damage. I think he is not in that top tier. I don't think he's necessarily in the middle tier of warriors, but I think he's a very much playable warrior. Chang'e. I think Chang'e's pretty average. I think there's a lot of gods I would take over Chang'e. She becomes just a one-shot mage. You just kind of try to dive the backline with blink, alt, auto, 3 with like a poly Mirrodin and hope you one-shot someone. If they beat the Aegis it, you're probably just dying anyway. She just kind of turns into an assassin, kind of like Hebo does, but I think she's just still pretty average. Charybdis. I've said it before. I think Charybdis has one of the best 1-2-3s in all of Smite. The 1 makes it so she can clear waves. She can also kill buffs and kill enemies that are diving her very easily. Her 2 slows and shreds protection. So if a solo laner or a support dashes onto her and no longer has that CC immunity or another dash, she just shreds them. And she slows them so they can't get away. And then her 3, if she can get it off, she does have some bad matchups for her 3 where it's very hard to get it off, like Susano. But once she gets into that 3, she gets a bunch of movement speed. She's immune to all damage, and she can run away. Chernobog, another very good ADC right now. His global is very strong. You can't really get punished in duo, and then he scales in and split pushes very, very well. It's hard to 1v1 him because of the mitigation he gets when he ults in. So you're reliant on just kind of wasting time. But he's also getting movement speed. You're getting slowed. Very, very good character. Chernobog is sick. Chiron, I think Chiron's average. I think he doesn't play mid all too well. He doesn't play duo all too well. He doesn't really build the current build for hunters. He has the same build as AMC. So you're basically just relying on your kit. If you're planning to dive the enemy's backline, Chiron can do that pretty well. But then at that point, he's kind of just at the mercy of the enemy jungler, and he's just kind of by himself. So I think Chiron's pretty whatever. Chronos. I think Chronos is really bad. I think there's plenty of other characters to play. His ult is not very great right now. He scales pretty well, but it's really hard for him to get to that point. Really only able to kill one person at a time. And if he doesn't kill that one person, there's a good chance that he's dying before he can even get his ult off because of how much damage is in the game. Kalina. I think Kalina's a pretty decent assassin right now. She's very hard to deal with if she gets ahead because of how much survivability she has. She also will be a pain to deal with if she can get her ult and her wall set up before a team fight and like just getting into that wall. And then her poke just makes her obnoxious. All these things together make it so she's just very, very strong. Cthulhu, another good tier character. He's farming for late game. That is so much is true. He's trying to get to a point where he is very tanky and very hard to deal with. They've neutered his damage a lot in alt form. And with how much damage is in the game, he gets shredded a little bit. But I think with the current nerfs to hunters, I think he feels a lot better than he did before the nerfs. And I think he's in a good spot because his laning phase is not too bad either. Cucullin, another good warrior. He's something you need to be able to play. He comes in and out of meta really quickly, where one meta, he'll be the #1, and then the next meta, he'll fall down a little bit, and there's just not really a reason to play him. And then the next meta, he'll come back and become one of the best warriors in the game. I do think he's okay right now. I just think he's not some of the better solo laners, and we know who the better solo laners are. Cupid. I think Cupid is average. He's got a nice counter pick into CERN, but I don't think it's great. But I don't think him overall is great. He's got that good matchup, but if you play him into something like Ishtar just smokes him. You play him into something like Rama has a pretty good matchup into him. Artemis, even though in the average tier also, Artemis has a very good matchup into him. So yeah, Cupid, not too great right now. Dodgy. Complete counterpicked character. It really just depends on what the enemy plays. If they play a bunch of characters with immunities, you're going to feel absolutely terrible. If they play a bunch of characters with no immunities, she's going to feel busted. So she's just a complete and utter counterpick. Dance, another good character. I think he's got a really good spot in the meta right now. His biggest thing is that he's not like CERN and he's not Chernobog. But if those characters are gone, some of them not as high tier hunters are getting played in duo. Dance has a very good chance of being played, but the problem is those characters that are getting played, you're not really banning hunters, so they're getting played a lot. Therefore, no Danzaburo. Discordia. I think Discordia is just pretty average right now. Her passive, which was once really strong, is still strong, but it doesn't really help duo lane out too much. It is just very hard for solo laners to just dominate a 1v1. So her little niche that she had, I don't think is really there anymore. She does scale decently well. Her laning phase is okay. But junglers just kind of one-shot her in the mid-game. She just feels very easy to kill. She's like an apple just looking to be picked. Because, you know, she's got the apple. She's just, you know, waiting to get picked. He's just average. Erlang. I hate him. I used to say, don't revert Erlang. Revert Erlang. He is so boring. He is so boring right now. Eset. She's average. With the heal nerfs, she doesn't really get played in support too much anymore. She did get a little bit of extra mitigation on her ult, but I think her biggest thing is that her kit is just not as busted as it was. Her 1, her 2, her 3, and her ult have all been nerfed recently, and I think that's kind of brought her down a lot. Fafnir. I think Fafnir is a good support. Again, a lot of characters are just going to be stuck in this good tier because they're not the top tier characters. I don't think there's anything wrong with Fafnir. What he does very well. He's got some good counter picks, and he's got some comps that you want to play around him, but he's just not one of those top tiers. His passive is very good, giving him extra protections and gold, so if you struggle to farm, Fafnir is somebody you should know. Just a good character. Fenrir. With how much Panatom plays this character and just wins in absolutely 1v5s, I'm going to put him in high pick and ban because I also think he's a very good ranked god. If he gets ahead, he's impossible to shut down. If he falls behind, he still has the pick potential with his ult. So I think he always will have an identity on any team comp. The comps that I think he's the worst on are when there's just big AoE damage on the enemy team and the game is late. At that point, if he ever jumps in, he's just going to kind of get one shot. Freya stinks. Every ring had a spot when they were good at the beginning of this year. And then as soon as like mage ADCs were played a bit too long, Hi-Rez killed every single item, buried them 6 feet under, and then spit on their grave. And now ADCs that are magical are terrible. Freya, terrible. Ganesh, terrible. Geb, terrible. Gilgamesh. I think Gilg is pretty average. I like the buff that they did to his one, making it so it does a little extra minion damage. His problem is that he loses a lot of matchups. He's not all too safe, but if he does get to that mid game and that late game, I think he's one of the most disruptive warriors in the game, and he can actually hard carry team fights. I think his biggest thing is also just no CC immunity also in those late games, so even if he does get pucked or pulled or CC'd or stunned, he could just die. Guan. This high PB spot is going to start to grow because there's a lot of characters I'm going to want to put in here. Guan. Regrowth. I hate regrowth. Guan loves regrowth. Like, there's so many items in solo lane right now that Guan just abuses. And so, yeah, he abuses those items. His kit, while it's in a good spot, isn't the thing that makes him busted. It's the fact that all the items in solo lane are just insane, and he uses all of them. Or sorry, he uses all the insane solo lane items. So Guan, high pick and ban. Hachi, learn a different hunter. Hades. I feel like Hades has gotten a lot worse with how much damage is in the game. Yes, he one-shots, but other people one-shot him now. I think in a meta where there's a little bit less damage on mages and hunters, and he's slightly tankier, even if it means his damage is going down, I think it benefits him a lot. But right now, he just gets sundered. He just kind of gets one-shot. Hebo. Wait. In a meta where crit is no longer getting built, he's helped a little bit. I do think he's still not in the best spot he could be in, but I do think it's helpful that crit is no longer like the must be all build in the game. I don't think he has also great matchups into the current hunters, but he's a good hunter that you should know how to play because there's metas where he comes in and just absolutely dominates. Hera. I think Hera's in a good spot right now. I think she's very hard to deal with. She has some good combos in the game. And then she's also a god that doesn't really need to build that much percent pen because Argus is the one doing a lot of the damage for her late game. And she's just trying to assassinate backliners. So Hera, very hard to deal with. She farms pretty well. You kind of have to shut her down early and mid, but she's very, very strong. We'll toss these two quickly into permaban because the same items that Guan abuses, Herc and Horus abuse. And then their kits are just stronger on top of that. Regrowth. Both of these characters, they absolutely abuse with it. Their cooldowns are way too damn low. They're way too safe. They can pull relics easily without putting themselves in position to die. Lame characters, they need nerfs. Actually, nerf this lame character tier or nerf these lame characters, whatever. Hu Yi, another just one of the worst hunters in the game. I think Apollo, Hachi, and Hu Yi have a strong claim to being a god that is just absolutely terrible and you never want to see laning with you. Hunbots. Hunbots high PB. Never a bad Hunbots game 99% of the time. Does what he does very, very well. If somebody doesn't have beads, he's giving you a free kill. He does team fight very, very well. He can't really fight at all until 5. Been the same story all years long for Hunbots. He's an ultimate bot. I think right now, though, I think he's got kind of like a late game hyper carry feel to him, where if you go late game, I actually think he can almost 1v5. But high PB, I think you need to know how to play Hunbots. Ishtar, high PB, absolutely busted laning phase, strong 2v2. She has CC immunity. She has CC on the enemy team. CC immunity. She's got safety. She got 2v2. She's got a good 1v1. She scales well to the late game. She's got a good objective damage. Literally anything that you want this character has. The only reason that I don't put her in the same tier as Cern is because Cern has a prot shred, which just makes him a little bit more valuable in a lot of games. Izza, I think Izza's in a good spot. If you want to win lane, Izza does it very well. She's also a very good ranked character because she's somebody that plays a lot different than other hunters. So if the enemy ADC or the enemy support doesn't really know how to play against Izza or is trying to fight into Izza on wave, she gets a lot of free kills. So Izza in a good spot. Janice. Don't play Janice in ranked. This character is so bad in ranked. Why play Janice when you can play 90 other mages? He's not terrible, but he's just such a ranked, reliant god, and your teammates have to be able to use portals, so you're relying on your teammates to be smart, and usually they're not smart because, you know, you're 50 games deep in ranked, 34 of the games have been boring, but somehow you've won about 8 of them, and then the other 16 games have been stomps the other way where your team just had no chance of losing, and you still lost a couple of them somehow. Not fun. You don't want to rely on your team, especially as a mage. Janice, not too great. Jingwei, I think Jingwei's in a good spot. Not in that great tier, not in the S tier. She does what she does. She's scaling to late game. Once she gets to late game, she can 1v5. She doesn't really want to do anything until then. She's also very hard to kill, like one of the safest laning phases in the game. Jorm, bad, really bad. Kali, I think Kali's build right now is just in such a bad spot that I'm gonna put her in average. I want to put her into bad because her build is bad, but I think I'm gonna put her into average because she's a really good ranked god. You get a lead, you're unstoppable, you fall behind, you can still farm and try to hope you hit 20, and if you hit 20 you can kind of win your team the game. So I'm gonna put her in average, but I don't think she's too spectacular, and I don't think she's really that bad. Kepri, I'm going to put him in average because he's like Geb and Ganesh, where you're playing like these backliners, but they just don't do as much as the best backlining supports like Afro, Hell. I think Kepri's kind of in that same tier as Geb and Ganesh, but I think what he does is just a little bit better. He's got a lot more CC or a lot more utility, a lot more peel. He's just got a lot more stuff. I think Arthur's in a pretty bad spot. I'm going to put him in average. He's been played a couple times. I don't think he's absolutely terrible, but I think we've seen stronger days from Arthur, and I don't think he's too great into the current solo laners. Cuckoo, I'm putting into bad. I don't care. This character stinks. I hate seeing him on my team. Kumba also stinks. Kuzumbo, we'll put into average because I don't think he's in this bad of a tier. I also think there may be a meta for Kuzumbo soon because of Thorns getting buffed. And if auras get nerfed really at all, I think Kuzumbo could make a comeback. So I'm not going to put him into the bad tier, but we'll put him into average. Lance. I think Lance is in a good spot. I think the biggest thing is he doesn't have any CC when you're playing him. He's got like the big cripple, and then he's got like a weird knockback that's in melee range. But a lot of the times you want your jungler to have CC so you can pull relics. I think him not having that makes him a little bit worse. Loki, I'm going to put Loki into good. I think there's a lot of assassins that do better stuff than him, but he's a very good pick assassin. He team fights okay, and he also has good poke potential. I think he is just Bluestone reliant because you want to play him through poke. Bluestone getting nerfed does hurt him a little bit, but I still think he's in a good spot. Maui, I'm going to put him into average because you're relying on your team to use your 2, and that's like the best part of Maui's kit is his 2. I do love Maui. I think he's very, very good and competitive, but I think he struggles in ranked, and because of that, he's going into average. Medusa, I think is bad. She's another hunter that there's just no reason to play her. Mercury, one of the best ranked junglers in the game. Even though crit got nerfed, it doesn't hurt Mercury. He still does what he does very, very well. He scales well, he fights well, farms well. Only thing he doesn't have is just big AoE damage. His CC is a line. He also has a line on his 3. And if your team is super far behind, or if their mage is far ahead, you can kind of just get one shot. So it's just a risky pick. Merlin, probably the best mid laner in the game. He does everything. The only thing he lacks is no CC immunity, but it gets made up for because a lot of the characters in support getting played right now have that CC immunity for him or have used some sort of utility for him, survivability. So he has that going for him. And then he just does anything that you want him to do. He can play safe and have long range poke. He can play very good engage. He can have really good blow up on engage. And then he can also peel you out. It's also very, very good into a lot of the gods. Morgan is a high pick and ban character. I think she's a lot better in ranked than she is in comp. In ranked, you need to know how to play her because I think what she does for damage, what she does for survivability, for farming, for self-peel is the perfect type of character for you if you're playing mid in ranked. The only thing she doesn't have is she doesn't have a jump, so if you're playing a dual wall character, she might not feel great, but overall, I still think she's a very good character for you to play in mid. Mulan, because Harry plays her, Variety plays her, I'm going to put her into average, but I think she's ass. I think she's not very good. She's very all in. If you fall behind, you're kind of useless, and she's basically forced to int in team fights because that's her entire style. I'll put her into average because she gets played in the SPL level sometimes. Naja, I think Naja's high pick and ban. He just absolutely runs games. He plays for beads. He can play for picks. He can play for team fighting. 2v2s very well. Everything that he does is just so strong. He also builds regrowth, so it gives him like some sort of physical defense in 1v1s, so it makes him very hard to deal with. Naja in a great spot. Neith, I actually think this is a good meta for Neith. The only thing that makes Neith not feel great is that if you put her in mid, you have to play a magical in duo, or you have to play a physical in duo and then have double physical. So that's the only reason I'm not going to put her any higher. I think she's very bad in duo lane, but I think her build right now is pretty good. Her kit is perfect for this meta, but yeah, she does struggle in those, in fitting her into a team comp. Nemesis, actually she's pretty average. When the crit build was good, I thought she could have been okay, but she really wasn't even played then. So I think with the crit build being nerfed a little bit, I think it makes her even worse. Erosion makes it so her shield is not as useful. Her 3 is not too great because of that. And then her passive, she needs a lot of auto attacks for it. She has no CC. She's just trying to kill one person. Yeah, I think she's pretty average. Nike, I think she's bad. I don't know how Sino makes her look decent some games in jungle, but I'm saying bad and really bad. Nox, one of the best supports in the game right now. She's in this same kind of tree with Afro and Hell, where she's very, very good, but it's kind of dependent on what the enemy team is playing, what your team is playing to decide how good she actually is. If you can hit your ones, though, if you can hit your ult onto the enemy backline, she is OP. Nuwa. I'll put Nuwa on average. I think a lot of mages just do better stuff than her. I do think she's a super interesting character, and she's one of my favorite mages, honestly. But she's limited in what she can do. She's not too safe. I just really like the character, though. So maybe I'm a bit biased putting her into average. Maybe she's even bad. But I think she's going to be average. Odin, a warrior. He's fine right now in the meta. The problem is a lot of warriors just do more than he does. But he's fine as a counter pick. He's got some decent matchups. So we'll put him in good. Olorun. What I said about Freya, copy and paste. Osiris. More like, oh, so I'm the worst god in the game. Because this god stinks. Probably the worst character in the game, and by a wide margin. He doesn't have damage. He's not tanky. His abilities are useless. Absolutely stinky. Terrible. Bad. Smelly. Stinky. Bad, really bad, not good. Osiris, more like, oh, why this? Like, why are you playing this? Play literally any other god. Olorun, even in solo lane, to take the Osiris spot would be better. Freya, Nike, Medusa, you can play anything over in solo lane and it's better than Osiris. This god stinks. Pele, I think Pele's in a good spot. I think some assassins do a lot more than her. Some assassins are a lot worse than her. So she's in that perfect kind of mid-tier of assassins. I think if some assassins are banned, she's a god you should look forward to playing. If you get ahead, you can kind of just dominate games by yourself. Persephone, I'm a pretty big Persephone fan, so maybe I'm overrating her. But I think what her kit does and what you want from her is perfect. If you want like what you want, you don't expect more. She kills like one person and she team fights pretty well. So if that's what you want, if you want to like pick potential or if you want to play slightly team fight oriented, I think she can be really strong. I will say though, her one getting caught on walls is painful. It's so painful. Just make her one go through the walls. I don't even care if it doesn't slow anymore. There's nothing worse than seeing my flower run into a wall and do no damage in a team fight and waiting 8 seconds for my next one. So please change the one. Change the one, please. Poseidon. His character has a bunch of movement speed, so he's a good character. Raijin, not very good, but I don't think he's in the bad, really bad tier, but he's still barely in the average tier. So not a god you really want to be playing. And I think same with Ra. He's not in the bad tier or really bad tier, but I don't think he's that great. I don't think there's a big reason to play him. I just can't put him in the bad to really bad tier. Rama, another one of the dominant hunters. Lanes well, can dive the backline, can kill frontline. He's got a lot of built-in damage in his kit. If the enemy uses their dash to get onto you, he's got a lot of slows. His self-peel's very good, and he does a surprising amount of damage for only being an auto attack character. Ratatasker, rawr. He's okay. He's okay. He's okay. Robin is not very good. His job is just to blink one-shot the backline, but right now he can't really do that. He's not good. Scylla, I'm putting her into bad to really bad because I feel like they've changed Scylla's kit and her identity so much that right now she just doesn't feel good to play. She's just a god that is okay at all points in the game. Late game is what you used to play for with her, but right now her late game is not that great. Her mid game is whatever. Her early game is whatever. Overall, there's a lot of mages I would take over Scylla. Serqet. Set. I hate this character, but I'll put him in good. There's just something about this character that is just so frustrating to play against. And I hate it. He's probably one of my least favorite characters in the game. I hate that he's in the game. I hate playing against him. I hate playing him. I hate having him on my team. I hate everything about this character. Shiva, average character. Scotty, not good. Sobek, not good. Sol, not good. Same thing as Olorun and Freya. Magical rings are terrible. Wukong. I actually think Wukong's okay in this meta. I think his build right now could be pretty decent. I think he does relevant damage unlike other solo laners. His only thing is you probably need blink beads with him because if you just go TP and beads, then you don't have engage. If you go TP and blink, then you have no beads. But I do think he's in an okay spot. Susano, probably one of the best junglers in the game. Same thing as Hunbots, except he plays fine before 5. He's got a lot of slipperiness, a lot of safety. He's got a lot of damage in his build or in his kit. And then a lot of the times, if you get ahead, you can kind of just 1v5, run down enemies and kill everyone. I think Sylva's in a good spot. I think the relics in the current meta aren't that favorable for him, but I don't think they're that bad either. Terra, one of the best gods in the game. Permaban, learn her. If you're playing support, learn her. Thanatos, because it's ranked, I'm going to put him in high PB. Thanatos is one of the most ranked characters in the game of ranked, ever of ranked. If you're playing ranked, you should ranked Thanatos because of ranked. He 1v5s, he dominates early game, he scales well, he's got an execute, so he's always got that good late game potential because he's got an execute. So Thanatos, always going to be a good ranked character. I think Morgan's good right now. I think she's really reliant on picking characters that she can turn into or having enemies have characters she can turn into. She has clear weaknesses. She's also not like a normal mage. She's basically an assassin with just ranged autos. But if you have good characters to turn into, or the enemy does, she's one of the best characters, period. And she's also very good in ranked because she's very hard to deal with. Thor, Armaban, probably the best assassin in ranked. It's either him or Mercury. He's got good CC. He's got good damage. He's got good safety. He plays multiple roles, which is always going to make him extra threatening. Thor, very, very good. Thoth, a very good ranked god. His problem is he just gets counterpicked a little bit. If they're playing something that can just kill you, you're a bit messed up. If they're playing something like Dodgy, Susano, they can stick to you, and then they can just kind of one-shot you, pull beads easily, stuff like that. Tiamat. Tiamat scales very, very well. Very, very well. She is pretty bad early game. And you want to get to that point where you're level 26 items. But if you do get to that, she's probably the best late game mage. And I do think her early game is fine enough that you can play through it. So I'm going to put her in good. I think Suki is very bad right now. He is an all-in character. And unless somebody doesn't have Aegis or something like that, you're going to be pretty useless. I think the only time that Suki's been actually meta in the past like year is the meta when Aegis was literally removed from the game, so it was just bead shell. And I think in that meta, he was actually broken. But with Aegis in the game, I think he's a bad character. Tyr's like a worse worse Horus, where it just kind of runs around and lives and pulls beads and stuff like that. They just do it in a more threatening way while also not making themselves out of position. Uller. G-Shot, do you want to do the honors of saying he's ass? He's ass, Bobby. Thanks, G. Vamana. Vulcan. I think he's a pretty average character. I think there's a lot more mages that I would rather play. He doesn't have very long ranges, a lot of his abilities, so you're forced to walk up a lot. They nerfed a lot of what made him strong, and I think that it's kind of left with just a pretty average character. X-Ball. I think he's an average hunter. I don't really get the X-Ball craze of why he gets picked a lot, so I'm putting him into average. I think he's very one-dimensional. What he does is just not great. I think Xing Chen is really bad. I think Yamoja, same thing as Terra. You got to learn how to play her if you're playing support. She's very, very good. A lot of peel, all that good stuff. Ymir. I think Ymir's in a good spot. He's a counterpick god. If the enemy doesn't have any jumps or leaps or something like that, I think he's a lot better. If they do have leaps, he's just not great. So he's a counterpick. Yu Wong. I said this on stream today. I'm not a big Yu Wong fan. I think he is okay, but I think there's a lot of mages I would take over him. He's decently safe. He does good damage, and he scales well. But I think there's just a lot of characters I would take over him. Zeus, a lot of damage, not safe. If you're playing a comp that can protect the Zeus, you'll do a lot of stuff, and Zeus can feel very strong. But other than that, Zeus not very good. Zhong, I don't even know. Zhong is just average. I don't have any opinions on him. He's just an average character. Surtur. I think Surtur's average. He's no longer unkillable. Backliners do a lot of damage, so he takes a lot of damage, and his damage isn't too high. I don't think he's great at what he does. He is overall just really average. Marty, on the other hand, probably a permaban. He's very hard to deal with. He does a lot of damage. His 3, the brush, is one of the most busted abilities in the entire game, and it just gives them a line to like back in that, and then you don't know if he backed. But you can't go check that, because if you do, then he'll just one-shot you. So he gives a lot of space with his 3, and then his ult just gives him another layer of safety on top. And then lastly, Eat Shell. This is more of a guess than anything else. I think she's going to be a very, very good god. The fact that she's going to have her 1, 2, 3, and ult all as damaging abilities, and her 1 has 2 different procs on it, makes it so she's going to have a ton of damage. She also has a lot of utility, and she feels very, very smooth to play. If you've not played a single E-Shell game, we have one on the YouTube channel where I'm playing support, so go check that out if you are curious. I do think she will be probably a mid laner, but I think she'll feel good in support still, and she just feels very, very smooth. Very, very nice feeling character to play as. Kind of like a Merlin in that case, where it just feels very nice to play the character. Hi, PB. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse at the top. The SMITE apocalypse is going to be starting soon. And that is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. My voice is gone. I hate talking. There's too many gods in the game. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you guys again next time. Peace.